Welcome y bienvenidos to another episode of Love Learning You. I have a featured voices guest today that I'm so thrilled to introduce you all to. But first, my puppy, Canella, my co-host and assistant. Alie, I think that you also have an assistant in your midst. You don't have to introduce him, but will you tell the viewers and listeners why they might hear some dogs?
Yes, my pit bull Abe is on the couch watching me from the other room. I can feel his loving eyes on me, but if we have a trigger go by like a motorcycle, he will let us know.
Yes. And you hear my dog. She's just such a protector at 12 pounds. Okay, so we're going to hop into it. I'm thrilled to have this guest who's not only a personal friend, but she has been a transformational practitioner I've gotten to work with in the past few years. Shout out to Miss Carla Martinez, mutual friend who introduced us. We love you, Carlita. And also congrats on your new role. We know you have a new career. So snap, big things happening. But we met through our common friend. And I've been awaiting this episode. We've talked about it for actually months. And I don't know if I know I'm not going to speak for you. I haven't been ready until now to do this
Ooh,
episode.
I
Truly,
love that.
truly. And I know you're very intentional about how you spend your energy. So I'm just glad to have space and time with you. I do always kick off our featured voices episodes. And if you haven't, make sure you hit subscribe or follow on your preferred platforms, whether you're just listening or you're watching on YouTube, which is where we love to hang out over here on the podcast. I do want to say this. We always start by giving guests their flowers because I do believe in telling people about how they impact you while they are still here. And Alie Mae not only has helped me transform many things in my life, things like weight management, my relationship with food, my relationship with my emotions, working through some incredible moments of grief after my mother passed away tragically a couple years ago. She has been and walked through the fire with me, but also just has an incredible story herself. This is my dear friend and also the hypnotherapist of Chicago, Alie Mae Miller. One flower I want to give you, I have two, but one flower I want to give you is from the moment I met you, I could tell that you were very in tune with understanding how people respond in situations. And we actually met, there was one chair left at an event we were both at Carla's birthday. And there was one chair left and it was next to you. And I just remember us kind of chuckling and joking about the names of drinks or whatever we were doing. And then I learned later that you're a hypnotherapist. And for those of you who are watching or listening, the other reason I want to give flowers to Alie Mae is she also introduced me to new ways of approaching healing and my relationship with God at times, and not maybe putting myself so much into a box. To really get out of my comfort zone. And I say that out of love because I also know how many people since working with you, when I say, you know what, they ask, well, how have you gotten through certain things or blah, blah, blah. And I say, you know, one of the most powerful things that has helped me has been hypnotherapy. I know the looks of taboo and confusion just from saying that openly to people.
Yeah.
So I'm also excited and want to give you flowers for following your calling and your gifts, doing it unapologetically, and doing it the way that you feel led to do it, even amidst a profession, which for many, many years, really the lifetime of its history, has been very taboo in a lot of ways. So I just want to say I admire you. Furthermore, y'all have to know one of the other crazy, wild nuances of our meeting. So Alie Mae actually has family names that are similar to my family on my mother's side. So my grandmother's name and her maiden name, Katie Mae Miller. And then I meet Alie Mae Miller. So we surely, I'm sure in a past life or something, have known each other. But without further ado, this is not only my friend, my own hypnotherapist, but Chicago's finest hypnotherapist you could find. Alie Mae Miller, welcome to the podcast. Friend, I'll let you introduce yourself with some details about you, but I wanted to
Thank
first
you.
give you some virtual flowers.
That's beautiful. You are so beautiful inside and out. You are just glowing, babe. I'm so glad to be
Well,
here
it's a
with
little
you.
warm. It's a little warm. It's
You look sun-kissed. You look wonderful, but I can tell you're shining from the inside too. And I think that's probably one of my most favorite parts of this work is literally just seeing the lights come on in people's eyes that have been dark for so long. I certainly walked through that darkness for a long time in my own life. I say usually like for the first 30 years of my life, I was very depressed, anxious person. And there was a lot that showed up, stomach issues, insomnia, fears, all that stuff. And just kind of on a whim in the pandemic, I started to learn hypnotherapy, hypnosis, because what else are we going to do in the pandemic? And I saw so many changes in my own perspective that I never thought were possible. That I had like a holy shit moment. Like more people need to know about our own inner healing capabilities and the power of our minds and how much that can assist us. And of course, it can become spiritual as well. So yeah, I went and I got my training, my certification through a school in Albuquerque. And it was a wonderful training. I did their basic modules for certification, but then I also did an extra module for medical hypnosis and past life. And started the business. The Hypnotherapist of Chicago URL just so happened to be available. So I was squealing. I'm like, I guess that's my business name now. Started the business and I haven't looked back since these past few years. And when you and I met, that was the very early stages of my career.
Yep. And it has been a fun ride ever since. So I will say too, if you are listening and you have not heard the terms inner child work, that will likely come up in a lot of our conversations today. So if that's of interest to you, or you have survived a number of traumas, which you've identified, many, I know in my own story, there were so many traumas that I've started unpacking in my 30s that I
Mhm.
just didn't even name or associate as trauma. And I know you helped me with uncovering some of that language too. And I'm excited to get into all that. And so before we go there, I always like to start with some cultural connectors and actually let guests know you on a little bit more personal level. And then we get into more of that professional. And I do, in this episode, it's special. I have some incredible breakthrough moments and just some different things I want to be sure to share, because I myself obviously had my own perceptions of hypnotherapy and what it could or could not accomplish. Just like anything we go into. And to be honest, I think you should be that way when it comes to your healing journey. Don't just work with anybody. Don't just flippantly go down paths that you're not sure you're ready for or not. So that would be one of the biggest things I want to throw out there. Let's hop into this first question because, well, it's something you and I love to talk about. Let's pretend we're traveling back in time. And we are going to go back in time. That was one other flower, if I didn't say it clearly. You are an incredible sister and auntie and daughter, by the way. I just want to say that. We've shared a lot of family stories, and I wanted to tell you that.
Absolutely.
We go back in time, though, and we're with, 8, 9, 10-year-old Alie Mae, second, third grade, fourth grade, and we go back in time and we're going to eat dinner together. What is one of the favorite foods or meals that we're eating together and why?
Oh man, okay. So comfort food, and I still eat it to this day as a 36-year-old woman. Have you had shit on a shingle? I said it right at the perfect time.
It's like my coffee sip. No, I haven't.
You
And
haven't
now
had
I
chip
have
beef?
to know, and so do the viewers.
Okay,
Shit
okay.
on a shingle. If you're watching in another language, I don't know that translates.
Okay, yeah. So they called it that in the war, but it's also called chip beef or cream beef on toast.
Okay.
And so it literally is just a white gravy that you make with a little bit of butter, flour, milk, and then you put in, usually we used budding beef that you get,
Yeah,
I
at the
think people
grocery.
use like Spam and stuff like that, but we would always use just the beef lunch meat, and you put it over toast, and it sounds like it's a comfort food. It really is.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah, last time I was home, I was like, Mom, will you make some shit on a shit? Because no one makes it better, right? Than
Yeah,
how you
no.
had it growing up, right?
Yeah.
So she made extra so that I could take some home with me.
So I love that, first of all, your mom was kind enough to make you extra shit on a shingle, or do you call it, when it's plural, do you call it shits on a shingle, on
I've never
shingle,
called it. I've never called it shits on the shingles, but I love
or
that.
a dump on
I
a
think.
roof?
Ooh, see, now you're just getting
Now we're just
fancy.
getting fancy. Okay, we'll get back on track, viewers. For all of you who went, gross, get back on track. Okay.
And might I add, I would enjoy that meal at night. Like it's a breakfast. It's usually breakfast, but I've happily eaten it for, dinner, midnight snack, whatever. But
Sure.
my family we did have a thing of like grilling out and then eating with all the lights off and just a kerosene candle going, a
Okay.
kerosene lamp. So yes, just picture me there eating my shit on a shingle, next to a kerosene lamp.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, I love you, Alie Mae. So I do have to say this really quick. I have not shared this here. Actually, one of our recent guests, his hasn't aired yet, Michael Dufournau, who's based in France, he shared about one of his recipes and he almost said the identical thing. And he said, it might not actually be that special, but it's just the way my mom makes it. And it was literally, he was describing what I grew up with in the Midwest as scalloped potatoes and cheese.
Okay.
And he had a beautiful French name, and I believe the origin's French. But I literally had to say, oh, well, in America, well, let me tell you the Southern version, potatoes au gratin. And so,
Yeah, right.
it's that whole evolution, though, of no matter where you're at. I think when we think of certain foods, no matter what it is, how cheap it is, no matter the circumstances, there are things that remind us of us and home, and you just can't quite replace that. And that's okay. I think that is how meaningful things are supposed to be to connect us. Um, to go with what you said, and it was a recent thing that I heard, and I heard that subconsciously, the music that we're listening to when we're a teenager is essentially the type of music we will probably always love and the songs we will always love. Do you find that to be true just like with food? Like, do you still find yourself like if you hear something, for example, for me, like if I hear this
Yeah,
that like the Maya song, like Ghetto Superstar, it reminds me of every like 14-year-old dance I went to.
absolutely. Your subconscious mind, here we go.
We're getting into it.
Hypnotist Alie, the hat's on. Your subconscious mind is an association making mechanism, and all of your memories are stored away in your subconscious mind. So even if these are things that you don't consciously think of every day, or you haven't thought about it in years, the subconscious mind remembers. So literally when you hear that song, I always tell my clients, like when you hear Creed playing and it makes you think of your first
Oh,
boyfriend, right? And then they laugh because it's like, yeah, Creed, yeah, we love Creed, but yeah,
my
it
sister
takes you back.
was a huge Creed fan.
Yeah, yeah, they're doing a cruise, the Creed cruise. We'll have to let
Oh,
Karen know
we'll let
about that.
Kara know. Kara will let you
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll
know.
send you the details. So yeah, and then with food, like me personally, there's nothing really that like I ate as a kid that I don't enjoy as an adult, but I will say, obviously, my palate has expanded. So things I wouldn't eat as a kid now as an adult, I'm like, where has this been my whole life?
Yes, exactly. So let's go into that then. If you're getting introduced on stage or in the future when you walk on stage, say you have to choose a song to walk out to an anthem, what song would you choose? And it doesn't have to be one from your teen years, but I am
Right.
curious to see if that is what you end up going to.
Oh, you know what? I think one of my favorite artists is Citizen Cope.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard of him. Okay, I think you would
Tell us,
enjoy his music.
tell us.
Check him out. There's a song called Let the Drummer Kick It, and it's just got like the best beat to
Okay.
it. I think that that would be my anthem, but I didn't discover him until I guess it was probably like high school. Like, yeah. So
Ah,
that
okay.
was a high school tune, but I still every time he comes to Chicago, man, I'm there, I'm front and center and I'm vibing. I know the words to all the songs. So yeah, that is
So
kind of a throwback.
the theory holds up. The subconscious remembers.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Um, so tell us what's on your bookshelf right now. And I say this as a person, you all, Alie Mae and I nerd out about a lot of things. I think
Yeah.
we both love to read different mediums. We love to
Hmm.
watch media, all that kind of stuff. At any given time, I'm reading a number of books and going between them. So feel free. Like most of my guests, I have found to actually be the same. And they go, well, I'm reading this one for pleasure. I'm reading this one for personal development. So whatever that means for you, what are some of your on Alie Mae's bookshelf right now so we can see inside the mind of a hypnotherapist?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the rocking chair. The rocking chair book right now is The Power of Now.
Hmm.
Um, the book on my couch is Seed of the Soul.
Oh, I haven't.
Um,
Who wrote that? Do you know?
oh
Or
my gosh.
I haven't read that.
I will send it to you. I've
Okay.
literally, this book is so profound. I've been reading it for a number of, I would say months. Like literally, it's so profound that I won't even read a chapter at a time, Justine. I will read a couple of pages and I'll just let it soak in. And then it's like in between, like,
Same.
it's just when I want to hang out with Abe. It's like in between laundry, stuff like that, whatever I'm doing. I'll just like, I just like feel good after reading a couple pages and then I'll move on. I've sent it to now probably like 4 or 5 clients.
Yep.
That's just something I like
Yep.
to do is just randomly like go on
Do the
thriftbooks or
same.
abebooks.com and just randomly send it. So
Yep.
this one I've sent, yeah. There's a book on exorcism somewhere around here. I think that's near my kitchen table.
And if you
And
just walked in on the interview or you like did the little time forward, yes, she said she also is reading a book on exorcism. And we'll circle back to that.
we will circle back. And then audiobook, I'm about to finish up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Wow, you are deep. Okay, so you're not, as my mom used to call them, you don't necessarily have any fluff books right now. My mom would always call, my mother taught me to read and write, and I was reading and writing by about the age of 4 tops. And just that was my escape as a kid too, to other worlds, and just I loved it. I love learning, still love it.
Yep.
But
Yep.
she would always have her novels and things like that because she felt like, oh, well, I need a break from the brainy stuff. So she was
Yeah.
big on us checking those out. So of course, not only did I grow up like reading Martin Luther King Jr. speeches, I grew up reading Sweet Valley Twins too. So,
Absolutely. Babysitter's Club, Nancy
yeah.
Drew
Oh, I
mystery.
wanted to
I
be
love a good
Claudia.
mystery.
I wanted to be Claudia.
Yeah, yeah, I love a good mystery. I just finished the audiobook I just finished a few days ago was The Silent Patient, which is yeah, it's just like, suspenseful thriller. And so like I've been listening to Hitchhiker's Guide and yeah, it's a bit deeper than what I expected. So
Okay.
I think my next audiobook is just gonna be so if you have any recs for like I really like thrillers. They just keep me on the edge of my seat. I can finish those up pretty quickly. I love books that like it's just hard to put down because there's so much suspense, right? So that's
I
what I'm
would
kind of
recommend
looking
to
for.
you, if you don't know, and to you viewers and listeners, and I'm actually about to revisit some of his work. I actually heard him speak in undergrad, but it was phenomenal. He's one of my favorite speakers I heard. We had to go to chapel in the university I attended for undergrad. And he was the only speaker that truly, truly stands out to me. And it is because I consumed and devoured his adult level books when I'm like 9 or 10. Well, now I understand why, but if you've not heard of Frank Peretti, he has written a series called, it kicks off with a book called This Present Darkness. It is all about spiritual warfare. And
Oh, I have
like, so
goosebumps. Okay.
you will, and he's gotten, I think, more into young adult over the years. I need to catch up with where he's been at lately. But I will say, if you are a person who is into just understanding even the world, and you want a book like that, like I would consume his books as a kid in the summer, like in 2 days. And
Yeah.
they're like, I mean, but you can't, it's like you're there.
Okay.
That
I
type
love
of
it.
writer. Yeah, that's the type of writer he is. But okay, we'll keep it moving. So before we move into some more specific professional questions, however, obviously a lot of our personal and professional worlds, they just are, and we live our passions all day, every day, because it's who we are. For many, that might not be true. And in my past, that wasn't true. It was very compartmentalized. So there might be some professional things come up in these questions. When you think about your life, what's a quote that immediately comes to mind of like, this is just a quote that has really been a recurring type thing in my life. And this is a quote that means a lot to my life's journey right now.
Yeah. Eleanor Roosevelt, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
I needed that reminder.
Yeah, this was actually the first time I heard that quote. I mean, yeah, 8 years old, 9 years old, whenever the movie Now and Then came out.
Oh, we should rewatch that.
I would love, I would love to rewatch that
Okay,
as
who's
an
coming with
adult.
us? We'll hold a reunion in Chicago. We'll view
Love
Now and
that. I will bring the popcorn. We will both bring the cute fuzzy
Then.
animals.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I remember asking my mom, like, we paused the movie and I was like, Mom, what does that mean? And it was just a life lesson for me. And it has been, and it's just, it's a very big takeaway. I don't know that I necessarily lived it then as a kiddo, or lived it even in my teenage years or my 20s, but certainly in my 30s, it's kind of like only my opinion of myself matters, and I make sure I'm kind to myself.
Yes. So it's interesting right now, my current phrase on our marker board on our refrigerator downstairs, I literally wrote out right now, I speak loving and kind words to myself and my partner, Thaddeus. So we'll
Great
get into this
reminder.
once again. We'll get into the power of written affirmation, audio, hypnotherapy, all of that stuff in a moment. Before we go there professionally with grown-up Alie Mae, tell us a little bit of context and background that you'd like to share so people understand who was Alie Mae as a kid, what kind of world did she grow up in as a kid? And
Oh
and I think it's powerful too, Alie Mae. I say this because I know some of your story. I
yeah.
think it's powerful that even if teenagers happen to catch this episode, or if you specifically are a parent of a teenager who is struggling with depression or belonging, which is very, very common for our current generations that are in school age, I think it could be really helpful. So I just put that out there because you do have a unique story and a lot of
Mhm.
pretty difficult circumstances that there are unfortunately many children who go through some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a very small town outside of Chicago, a couple hours southwest of the city. It was a great place to be raised, of course, but once I turned about 21, 22, I'm like, this is too slow paced for me. There's not enough job opportunities. I'm out. So I've been in Chicago for a while, but I grew up, mom and dad were there. I had a sister that was 3 years older than me. And I mean, we got along and then we fought, but it's typical sister stuff.
Yeah.
And I was kind of the annoying, sister. So I was kind of, solo there for a while, and we had really great, we had really great woods by my mom's house. And so I kind of always say, like, I grew up in the woods and I would just go down to the creek and just hang out, and like really just loved being around nature. But looking back on it, I was pretty much a loner. There were a lot of times that, I would just hop in my rollerblades and I would just rollerblade around town for hours by myself with my, cassette player in my ears. And it wasn't that it was a bad childhood. I just remember kind of looking up at the sky and being like, why am I here? Like, why this backyard? Why this family at like a very young age? And I remember a friend of mine telling me like years later, like, that's a sign of intelligence, you know, that you were asking those questions.
Mhm.
But really the answers that I gave to myself was like, there is no purpose. Like you know, there is no meaning. And you know, there are just things looking back on it now that it's like, holy shit, kid, you were really hard on yourself. I remember, you know, getting in trouble for whatever it was and being sent to my room. And I stole a couple we were a candle family. I stole a couple of candles from the bathroom, and I put all my stuffed animals in a circle, and I lit the candle, and I held my own funeral.
Oh,
And it's,
oh,
I don't know if I ever told you that. And I mean, I was so young, right?
I
And
think
it's
you
just,
told me that. I think, well, and that's what I was hitting on too, just to be explicit for you all watching.
Mhm,
This is a person who at the time, and this is just my perception outside hearing you talk about these things. Um, you're a person who at a very young age is dealing with depression, essentially,
mhm.
but you wouldn't know to call it that.
No.
You're just kind of feeling like, what's the point of me being here? Why am I even here? So I just want
And
to name
yeah.
that, because often we see our kids struggling, but we didn't have the language, especially when we were growing up
Mm.
and generations before us. You wouldn't have had the language to even know, oh, my daughter's holding her own funeral. That's probably not joyful. Like, sorry, but back to your,
No.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's like what you said about like traumas. Like even when we experience traumas as children, we don't even sometimes realize that that's bad, right? That's a
right,
bad
right.
thing. That's not supposed to be happening, right? That's actually damaging and that's not normal. And then yeah, just to kind of wrap up the funeral thing, like I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And then obviously, you know, in a state of hypnosis, I wanted to address that memory because it kind of started popping up. And it's like, yeah, essentially what I was doing without knowing, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just a kid, but without realizing it, I was programming myself that every time I failed, right? Because I got in trouble, got sent into my room, I just wanted to die. And
Oh,
that
that's
stuck with.
how much you held on to it.
Yeah, it just stuck with me for a long time. And I remember being a teenager saying things like, I hate myself, I hate my life, I hate my life. And that became my life then, you know, you're not going to all of a sudden like one day say, no, I love my life. If all you're doing is replaying and replaying those same thoughts of like, there's no purpose, I hate my life, I hate myself, I'm no good.
Mm. How then, as you have grown into an adult, you have a different professional career background than what you currently do for
Yeah.
nearly 20 years, being in the media industry, doing some incredible work, creative, all the things that you are. Tell viewers and listeners, before I share a little bit how I got into hypnotherapy and all the questions I had, what you might experience if you're a first timer, and I'll share some of my stories. But how did you stumble upon it before you became, the certified practitioner that you are? What even led you into hypnotherapy? And does it go back to little Alie Mae holding her own funeral and
Yeah.
searching, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think I manifested this career, honestly, beginning of the pandemic. We used to travel a lot, the film crew that I worked for. So, of course, we all kind of got like laid off, right, at the beginning of
Yeah.
the pandemic. And so that was a very scary time for someone who was already dealing with depression, anxiety, and a lot of fears. So, I remember thinking like, oh, you know, I want it to be something close by. I know I'm probably going to have to go back to school and all these things are racing through my head and I'm trying to research things like what can I do? Because obviously film media, it just it wasn't going to stick during the pandemic, right? So I just so happened to walk past a building on the block that I live on for the thousandth time, and I look up and I see the word hypnosis, hypnotherapy on it, and immediately look at my dog and I'm like, what's that? I was enrolled in YouTube University classes that night, Justine.
Mhm.
I mean, I just immediately started to I just hopped in it. And like I said, saw so many changes in my own perspective. And I hadn't even been hypnotized yet. I was just learning about the way.
Literally. Yeah.
Right. But I was just learning about the way that the mind works and our own perspective and how we've been programmed from such a young age, like doing things to comfort ourselves,
Yeah.
holding our own funeral. Oh shit, this idea of I just want to die became comforting to my subconscious mind. Let's start to tell it it's okay to live. It's okay to enjoy
Yeah. If
life.
I can tell it that, why can't I tell it this?
Absolutely. So yeah, so then that's when after I kind of went through those YouTube courses and stuff like that, I enrolled in the school in Albuquerque. And of course, when you tell your family, well, I want to go to school to be a hypnotist, they kind of like, what? But they're kind of used to it with me. I've always been kind of a big kid with big dreams.
Yeah, we share that in common in our stories and in our paths. I think because of your willingness to also be vulnerable and transparent with your clients,
Yeah.
that was also something I saw right away. And because that's been so important to me being in K-12 education, that is why I've also been very picky who I've worked with. Could you break down really quick something that you did that I found really, really helpful? Our first session was actually virtual because it was still lockdown and stuff
Yeah.
when we had connected, and still pretty heavily locked down. And I was not located close. So our first was virtual, but talk through people a little process, and I will do the same. But one of the things I loved is that you do a discovery session, you get to know people, like, and you also, you're very matter of fact and you are educating in the process. So you all need to understand a lot of our first session was Alie Mae ensuring that I understood also even the differences between our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, and then the superconscious. Because for me, especially, I'm sure you picked up on it right away when you met me, I'm going to have questions about what the things mean because that's just kind of how I'm wired. Not everybody's that way. Not everybody needs that or wants it. For me, I want to know the people I'm working with, who I'm allowing to have those roles in my life. And I think that that's really, really important because unfortunately, there are people who in their distress or in their circumstances, they might scam people, even if they're not practicing. And that could be pastors, it could be business people, it could be
Yeah.
hypnotherapists. No matter, I am just a huge advocate here at the podcast of always saying, hey, you need to educate yourself and investigate anything, just like you went down that path. How did hypnotherapy personally impact you after having that jolt of going, oh, this is it, I am doing this? What had you seen as you went through that process and just in your own life that made the experiences real for you just to experience hypnotherapy?
Oh yeah. I mean, I always tell my clients like during my actual training, like I healed some shit. I was on depression meds at the time, and I actually had to get a written note from my doctor because they knew I was on the meds. I was transparent
Okay.
about that, but I had to get a note from the doctor saying I'm healthy enough to go through training mentally. I can handle this. And I just remember one of my teachers, Dr. Sapien, he's also an MD, he's kind of asking like, oh, why are you on this depression meds? I'm like, oh, chemical imbalance or whatever. And he's like, oh, so you're not in control of the chemicals in your brain? And the light bulb kind of like went on, and he's like, if it's not you controlling those chemicals in your brain, who is? And it's like, bing. And it's like, holy crap, like we really can when we have the perspective and we change our perspective that we actually can control the chemicals in our brain, then we can wire them and program them to, again, go to the lighter areas of life rather than all that darkness that I had been surrounded by. So, I mean, I'm a completely different person. If you and I had met, 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have wanted to be friends with me. I mean, I was a very negative person. And like I said, there was a lot of stomach issues, a lot of just, coping mechanisms and habits that weren't healthy. And
As
so
we all have.
And yeah, and now it's like one of my suggestions I write with my clients is the older I get, the healthier I get. And it
Hmm,
couldn't be any more true. I mean, this is the healthiest I've ever been at 36, mentally, emotionally, spiritually,
same,
physically.
same.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, 39, but you
yeah,
get the idea, folks.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
It's like what hasn't changed? It's wild.
you have your own transformational experiences, and you were, just so viewers know too, for you, and actually the original reason I'm going to get into a little bit more of my own experiences, just because I want some people to understand if they're a little leery, or maybe they just want to know more about hypnotherapy.
Yeah,
But I originally actually came to you with goals around weight management and my relationship with food.
yeah.
Why I'm starting with that is because of where I'm going to tell you some of that work went and how deep it gets. But this is often how it starts. So when you started, though, I know some of the reasons specifically with habits and stuff. What were some of your vices, and what was your intention with some of your work early on? And just viewers, listeners, at least for me, at least in talking with people the past couple of years, most people seek out hypnotherapy, I think, and I want to hear what you like, what you know from your industry. It seems like drinking, overeating, depression or loneliness, smoking. I
Yeah,
could be
yeah.
totally off. Those are just the
Oh,
things I randomly see. I'm
yeah, of
sure
course.
you've seen the whole gamut, but
Usually when I hear the question, like, what can you use hypnosis for? I'm kind of cheeky and I respond, it's like more like, what can't you use hypnosis for? Because everything you said, check, check, check. Absolutely, Justine. I do feel like the first year or so I was in business, I was attracting people who were experiencing depression and anxiety because that's what it helped me so much with, right? And do you remember this? I wasn't even doing past life sessions yet. I kept telling my friends from class, like, oh, I don't think I'm ready. And they're like, no, you're ready. I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm ready. And then a medium called me that December, my first year or so in business. And she's like, hey, I'm a medium. My spirit guides are telling me you need to start doing past life sessions. You're ready. Let's do this. I'm like, okay, I guess if the guides are saying it. So, so she was my first past life session pretty much, on the books. And it was a wonderful experience. And I've had so many amazing past life sessions since then. Um, yeah, and right now what's popping up since so many people are traveling, fear of flying, that's a popular one.
okay,
And I was
okay.
waiting for this one. I was waiting, and it's manifested, fear of cicadas.
What?
I have a
I mean,
session this week.
they're real and they're out here. So especially if you're in the Midwest, I don't know about other areas, but right now, if you walk into certain parks, especially,
Hmm.
ooh, wait, that is
Yeah.
all you're gonna hear is that. Of all
Hmm.
wow. So
Yep.
you've had multiple people who it is fear of cicadas.
This is just the
Oh, just
first
one.
one.
Oh,
I
the
was
first
just
one.
like
Okay.
last week, it kind of just popped in my head. I'm like, there's gonna be some people who need help with this. Because I think honestly, I just saw a TikTok, Justine, and it was like, so there is a poor girl, she was crying in her car and she's like, I can't even get out of my car. And I'm like, oh, honey,
Wow.
hire a hypnotist, you know?
Yeah. I think where 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 do some of these fears come from? Do you think? Like, because and many people, you might listen or watch this and go, that's wild. No way. Like, based on your own experiences. But if
Yeah,
you really dig underneath, look,
yeah,
we all have some pretty wild things if you're willing to look in the mirror and uncover. If
yeah.
you start asking yourself, we all have very irrational fears.
Oh yeah, they are irrational, but that's the fears come from the subconscious mind,
Okay.
right? So a lot of times consciously, even this client, for example, she's like, this seems so silly. I know they don't bite. I know that they can't hurt me. Logically, consciously, she's saying this doesn't make sense. And even people with phobia, they realize these phobias aren't
Right.
logical.
Right.
It's the subconscious mind's job to protect us, right? But if it hears something like, oh, this is alarming and it's a fear, it means that it's literally trying to protect you from something. So for example, You know, let's say my Uncle Mike, he got bit by a German Shepherd when I was a young kid, and I saw the aftermath and the blood, and oh my gosh, like now all of a sudden as a kid, I'm scared of all dogs, right? Because
Yeah.
my not logical mind is saying protect her from this pain. Dogs equal pain. That's literally the reasoning in the subconscious mind's perception of things. So now I'm afraid I would grow up afraid of all dogs when really logically, consciously, we all know that not all dogs bite, certainly not just big dogs, not just German Shepherds. And Uncle Mike probably had it coming. He was probably a bit of a jerk or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's literally the reasoning capability of our subconscious mind is only that of a 2 to 4 year old. So to circle back to what you're
Whoa.
talking about with inner child work, so many of us get mad and frustrated and angry at ourselves, which is the common result of fear.
Yeah.
We get so frustrated with ourselves for being afraid of something like a cicada, when really it's your inner 2 year old who's afraid of the cicada. You have to regard yourself with more kindness. You have to talk to yourself in those moments the way you would talk to a small child, because you would never be angry with a 2 year old for fearing a bug.
That's right. Wow. So when I think about our work together, and to go into a little bit of my story, I decided this in prayer and in advance. This is the first time that I'm sharing some of these things publicly. And I am working on a book specifically that I'll have more stories about these topics, but I'm excited to share this. So one of the things, and I'm going to connect the dots here with inner child work, and then also some of the adventures that we've been on together in our sessions, so people hear kind of all the pathways we went down. So as I approached Alie Mae, I knew that I was experiencing a lot of body inflammation. I knew that I had struggled in my 30s to maintain healthy weight and a healthy relationship with food. I also knew from other therapy, and also working with some different shamans and different modalities in my 30s specifically, more heavily involved in the Christian church all my childhood, as well into my 20s in the United States. Still follower of Christ and believer in God. And that is my set of beliefs, in addition to meditation and practices like hypnotherapy and connecting with ancestors and all of these things that I think that many people still don't talk about, especially in the States. I think we need to. And I think we need to be more open and honest, because as a child, I experienced a lot of supernatural things that now, even that validation of working with you, Alie Mae, to have somebody say, oh, no, you're not crazy.
Yep.
This really happened.
Yeah.
And then the same token, when I had been to traditional therapy previously, it felt like it was just a constant reliving of trauma. And actually, once I started that in my early 30s, and not that it wasn't beneficial and helpful in certain ways,
For
but
sure.
also I wouldn't have known what the actual underlying things were at the time. It was
Yeah.
just, I'm looking at how I look and feel, and I don't like it. And this isn't me. And it's really affecting my self-worth even more. Like, this isn't me. And I knew that I had developed workaholism habits, overperformance, which really went back to seeking my mother's love, all the
Yep.
things that you might do those things in traditional therapy. I'm even a certified practitioner of a communications model that's based on therapy. That has been monumental in my life and my healing journey, similar to you, in that we chose paths that also help us heal. So like we're
Yes.
not teaching and doing these things just because, oh, I feel I know so much more and I'm going to help people. No,
No way. I'm a
we're
work in progress. I tell all my
literally
clients that.
we're practitioners, meaning we are practicers of these things. It doesn't mean that we don't have awful days and like things that we're going through and also struggling. So I'm a huge proponent of working alongside people who also share that philosophy. What happened in my early 30s, once I started actually trying to peel back the layers, which is why, to be fair, many humans in our experiences were scared. It is so hard to look in the mirror, and it's so much easier to really just remain comfortable where you are, even if you're miserable and suffering.
Sure.
it seems to be an easier choice because it's a suffering, it's like the phrase dealing with the devil, instead of the one you don't know. I
Mm,
think that our psyches and our human experience, we often do that subconsciously as a form of protection. Well, I know this food is killing me slowly, but right now it feels good.
mhm.
I know these
What
cigarettes
we've done the
blah, blah,
longest
blah.
is the strongest, right?
Correct. So to your point, I'm in my early 30s. I still, I'm making a consulting trip home from Indianapolis. To this day, I do not know how I got home.
Yeah.
I had an entire flashback to one of the violent sexual assaults that I had survived in my 20s. Because I had grown up in a pretty religious context as far as how my mother did or did not teach me about my body,
Mm.
and what we were taught about sex in the church, and that a woman's body is only for her husband. Um, Justine did not know to call that situation RAPE.
Right.
She associated it, and this is, mind you, amidst being a very high performing educator and getting into a national program and becoming an administrator in Chicago public schools. This happened at 25, 2 years before that. I didn't know and never told anyone and buried it because I thought, I can't tell anyone. This is completely my fault
That's
because I was drinking too much and it
I
must have
let
been how I was dressed.
I let it happen. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
me. So what I started to uncover, fast forward, what I start to uncover, and then when I meet you, there's still a lot of unresolved things. There's still
mhm.
things I'm learning every day. We
Of
should
course.
always be learning about ourselves every day.
Amen. Amen,
And
sister.
devoted to that, not devoted on watching other people and comparing. You should be so devoted to you and
Mhm.
understanding who you are, because otherwise we can't begin to even go to those same depths with other people ever. It's just not going to happen usually. So I say all that to say, then fast forward, I still am holding these things and have processed some, but I come to you going, I still can't figure out the weight stuff. From there, it starts to unlock, and so much underneath that. I want to go back to something you said earlier, that I think, especially in America, because our system was conflated with a religious agenda that is often, in my opinion, not actually godly. It's for
Mhm.
political advancement. But
Yeah.
because it was conflated and we called ourselves a Christian nation, you often see still very almost puritanical approaches to the body,
Hmm.
sex. And because of growing up in the certain churches that I was in, not because my parents were so awful or anything like that, it's it's what it was programmed. And what was programmed through Sunday school when I'm a kid, and through youth group as a teenager, where we're instructed to write husband letters to our future husband at the age of 12 about how we're
Ugh.
saving ourselves for them. So Justine started to identify with you. I started to identify with you. So much shame. And shame does a real number on your programming and that small inner child that you're supposed to be talking to like a 2 or 3 year old.
Hmm.
Shame tells us that the most broken parts of us are never acceptable. And so therefore you're hiding yourself. And so I tell people, I now know what an incredible actress I am. Because
Yeah. Damn.
when you can rise, you still don't even know your body. Like that book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Keeps the score.
So when you do start uncovering, what I will say is, and I'm saying it transparently, just as a disclaimer, I do also tell people, even though I've referred many people to you, I will tell the same thing here, which is you have to also be devoted to really wanting to love yourself and learn yourself and being okay with accepting all the parts of who you are. And if you're not, then it will be a jarring experience, or you'll be turned off, or you'll downward spiral to a different direction. Perhaps not necessarily, but I will say I would love to hear your perspective on that. I'll pause and I know we're limited on time. There's a couple more things I want to share.
Oh yeah, no, we're good.
But
We're good.
okay. What would you say to that so far? And just know
Yeah.
what you know about my journey. You know, I'm very transparent. And I've also been working to figure out, how do I share some of the things I've been through, but in ways that help people? Because I also know that sometimes I am very honest, and that can also be so almost traumatic for people who have no idea that they're being triggered by just me being purely honest about who.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the takeaways that I want the viewers to know is that, love and acceptance, it does sound sometimes a little bit hard. The idea, like I can't even fathom that, right? But I think after that first session, when we're going through the model of the mind and you're really starting to see, oh shit, I was programmed, I wasn't actually doing anything wrong, then that acceptance and love component becomes a lot more easier to wrap your mind around, because it's literally an open portal to our subconscious minds the first 10 years of our life. Okay, our conscious mind is not fully developed until we're 10 years old. So that means basically the first 10 years of our life, everything we experienced in our surrounding, the way we
Mm.
experienced our parents and how they treat each other, what we heard about ourselves, and from the church, of course, it all went in as fact. It all went in as programming.
School plays a big part.
Absolutely. And that then becomes the foundation of your programming that you hold on to even throughout your life, adolescence into adulthood, until you do something like hypnosis to try to reprogram if it needs reprogramming, because there's a lot of negativity coming at us as children, as kids. So it's like you weren't doing anything wrong. You were programmed to believe these limiting beliefs about yourself. But guess what? The subconscious mind is 95% of how we think, feel, and act,
Yeah.
even as adults,
Wow.
right? So consciously, that's why going back to like that smoker, right? Like they can, they have 200 reasons why not to quit, why not to smoke, why they should quit, right? And then at the end of the day, they get into their car, they're driving home, and they're halfway through a cigarette before even consciously realizing they lit up, because they have been programmed
Yep.
to do that.
It's the coping mechanism.
Yeah, and it's association making mechanism. It thinks smoking means relaxing, being off work, starting my me time, whatever it is. So yeah, so I just did want to bring that up. That's one of the things that I talked to about clients in the first session, that it's like you're not doing anything wrong. That shame was coming up. It's not that it was wrong, and it's not that those fears are wrong. Your subconscious mind is doing what it's supposed to do, trying to protect you from pain and move you towards pleasure. But sometimes it actually thinks pleasure is not great things, like smoking, or like blaming ourselves
Yeah.
and shame,
Yeah. The self-destructive. Oh, well, this feels good
self-sabotaging.
because it's the pain I know.
Mhm.
So I'm still thinking right that way. There's two other particular sessions. I just want to throw it out there because I do want people to hear just how comprehensive, I guess is the right word, and kind of holistic your approach is. I would also say it's very highly personalized. So example, if you go down a rabbit trail and you start to research hypnotherapy and stuff after this, one thing I will say, I can't speak to anybody else, and I have only worked with you as a hypnotherapist.
Mhm.
Perfect. I have only worked with you as a hypnotherapist,
Yeah,
and as people are looking and kind of conducting their research and feeling out who's in alignment, because
yeah,
obviously that
so
is,
important.
it's very, very important. How would you have people start to examine that through how they look at like your services? I say this from a personalization lens as a consultant,
Yeah,
who values that with my clients and having a personal experience. You all need to understand that any session that I do with her has been, she personalizes and records an audio that she co-creates with you based on your goals, and where she knows you have voiced where your subconscious is and where those work need to happen. So it's a very custom experience. What else should people look for if they're searching for a hypnotherapist? Because
yeah,
when I looked into other people, Alie Mae, I'm just gonna be real.
yeah,
They did not offer what you offer. And it seemed also very like, just that there wasn't the depth there. It was
yeah.
like, this is my model, And it wasn't, it was almost one size fits all. I do this with all my clients versus your approach, which in theory, I think all therapy should be personalized, but we know that it's not. So what should
Yeah.
people look for?
That's a great question. That's a great question. If you think you're ready for hypnosis, my kind of formula for hypnosis working is you have an emotionalized desire to change. You're willing to do the work, which is listen to that hypnosis audio daily for a couple of weeks, and you vibe with me, you feel comfortable with me, then hypnosis is going to work for you. And then that's exactly why I offer that free consultation. It's usually, it's called 15 minutes, but we usually talk longer than that. So it's just on Zoom, it's online, and that really it's for me to be able to answer questions, talk about my process, but it is very important that you feel comfortable with your hypnotherapist. And I would certainly never be offended, and it's happened before where, I have a consultation and maybe somebody doesn't book with me, whatever, right? Like you're not going to vibe with everybody. That would be weird if I did. I might be a AI or something then.
Is that
But
you in there? Is that
yeah,
you
right.
in there?
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I think that it's important. I think that it's important to be able to have some sort of a conversation with the hypnotherapist before you even book the session, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah, the type of hypnosis I practice, which is really cool, integral hypnotherapy is because you play an integral role in your hypnosis. We write your suggestions together, especially like those first couple of sessions. Do you remember that, Justine? We collaborated on the wording of the suggestions. So like
Co-creation.
you approved everything that was going into your subconscious mind. It wasn't me just saying, all right, Justine, close your eyes, I'm going to tell you what I think you need to hear. We collaborated on all those suggestions so that you are 100% on board with what we were putting into your subconscious mind, because essentially your subconscious mind is the computer. Remember, there's not logic there. It's just acting off commands, right? Smoke, 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 or drink, 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 or be sad,
Right.
be sad.
Right.
So now
Donut,
we're using,
donut, candy bar.
yeah. Exactly. Let's fill the void with something, right? Let's pack it down with more donuts, more ice cream. So yeah, so that's why I think it's important to be able to have a little bit of a conversation with the hypnotist up front. That's why I personally offer the consultations. And I think a lot of people really enjoy the process of being able to collaborate on their suggestions so that they know exactly what to expect. They're getting what they want.
Right, right. That goes back to two, again, be so relentlessly devoted to your own growth and development that you don't just flippantly hire whoever. Don't just flippantly go to whatever therapist or whatever pastor or whoever you decide, hey, at this moment, I might want this person to work with me this way, or I might want this mentor. I'm a huge advocate for that. The other thing I wanted to point out, and many of you may have heard me talk about this a lot on this podcast, one of the easiest ways, and it's very similar crossover almost from a brain perspective, is when by the time we reach our 24, 25, that our new neural pathways stop developing. So whatever was imprinted essentially outside of whatever expansion you do between the ages of 10 and 25, and depending on those experiences, we don't just create new neural pathways. So essentially, when I work with clients or groups of people when we're training, one of the things that we tap into with understanding programming and subconscious in similar ways, Alie Mae, especially if you're still a person listening and you're still like, I'm still a skeptic, hypnotherapy is like a magic or magician or whatever, that's okay. What I'm likening it to from a more academic standpoint or brain science too, even though Alie Mae has done a lot of this already today, if you're not maybe receiving it in that way, what I would say is it is impossible, literally on a biological level, unless you put yourself into like zone of proximal development type thing of, I need to feel a little out of my comfort zone. I'm not telling you to go into situations where you feel terrified, but the fastest way to develop new neural pathways is actually to put yourself into a situation you haven't been in or a new like go to a new type of church or something, or a new type of restaurant food or whatever, even those small moves, that little bit of
Mm,
nervousness you feel, that
mhm.
actually is why I'm a huge proponent of travel, even in your own backyard. Go to a new park, go to whatever, because that opens up new neural pathways for you to actually see the world differently and to expand your cultural awareness of even going, well, of course that's possible. I've traveled here and I've seen people live this way. That's not insane to me. But when you haven't lived that, you will inadvertently, because we're human, we all do it with things. We go, oh, that's wild. Why would they eat that? Why would they do that? Why would they wear that? That's then where prejudice, stereotyping, and all of those things, it's actually very similar. It's all subconscious. It's all what's been programmed. But similarly, to heal, you have to also take different pathways that maybe you haven't before. What would you add to that? I just wanted to connect those dots
No,
too.
I love that.
I was drawn, I
Intuitively.
need people to also
Yeah.
understand like, I'm drawn to this for a reason, because
Yeah.
I also deeply believe in it. And I know that it's a hard sell for some people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't know anything about hypnosis until, like I said, I saw it on the wall, hypnotherapy, like, holy crap, what's that? And it's
Oh,
funny because in my own experience with depression, like I remember thinking like, I wish I could just tell my brain how to act. And that's what we're doing. So, I
woo.
mean, if you want to call it mind magic, you certainly can. One of my clients asked, like, oh, is it cheating? Is it cheating? I'm like, no, it's making it easy because everything in life you're programmed to believe is hard. And yeah, there's a lot of hard things to life. Absolutely.
Wow.
Let's just make some changes easy. And that's what hypnosis is. Side note, you have absolutely inspired me to, when I go hammock at the park later, to hammock between a couple different trees on the other side of
Oh,
the
you
park.
you go, Alie.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it
and
will be it. Our perspective has a lot to do with where we're standing.
absolutely. There are, and another point I want to add, because what you just said was so eloquently stated, and there's so many thoughts that I have. Hypnosis is the last stop shop for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Our teachers told us be prepared, be ready. A lot of people have tried a lot of different other types of healing. Maybe they've helped, maybe they haven't. A lot of people, they wouldn't even think of hypnosis until I have a lot of people say, like, oh, yeah, my best friend's grandma quit smoking with it in the 70s. So they said maybe I should do this for fear of cicadas, right? And
Right.
so it's like, it really is. Like I used to put in my website and after all my social media posts, like you can't say you've tried everything if you haven't tried hypnosis. And it's a last stop shop for a lot of people. But it's incredibly effective. And it can happen a lot more quickly than what we think, than what we would assume, right? I mean, how long do our laptop updates take, our computer updates, our phone updates take? It really doesn't have to be this long, drawn out process like maybe other types of therapy
Yes.
encourage.
Yes. Exactly. So let's get into, I want to talk two different topics, and they have to do with two different sessions we have, but I want to share a little bit of my own story, but also just highlight for listeners and viewers the pathways they could go down if they decide to. um and I sent you the other day, I sent you something, and this guy had used the term open soul surgery. And I said, that's what Alie Mae is. She's an open soul surgeon. And I say
Where
that
did that
it's so
go?
funny because we also have a colleague friend. Well, she's mutual for you and I met her through my sister. You've met her once before, Courtney Hartman.
Yeah, of
She's been
course.
with you. She actually is in surgery. So now I have two friends who they do different types of surgery.
Different types of surgery.
Yeah,
Ooh, I'm a surgeon.
I would describe a lot of your work as surgery of the soul. And not because it's ever about the vehicles or even the person in front of you being the facilitator. I think that's something I've run into actually in the States, especially. I might conduct a workshop and then the admiration is more like than no, I'm just a person. I'm just asking you questions that I've already asked myself in life. And whatever you choose to do with it is what you choose to do. Like Alie Mae or any hypnotherapist or any healer, they're not like, she isn't God and she's not the end all be all of your answers. I love the vehicle because it is focused on ourselves taking responsibility and accountability for putting in the work to ourselves. And
I am simply a guide.
yeah, that is why it actually, I think, is so difficult for people to stay committed to. So one of the things that came up as we got into our work together and I was doing my audios, one of the earliest things, just for you all to know, like the base level of where I started, I was unable to even look at myself in the mirror naked for years. And so one of our very first audios was knowing how to look at myself with love, and doing that. Part of my homework was looking at myself naked in the mirror. And when you have been through things or your body has been abused in different ways through your life, you if you want to move forward, you have to unpack it. And it, or your body will let you know. Similar,
Yeah.
that's why I shared my experience, not because I need sympathy or I'm some warrior or anything like that, but because if you've had those experiences, you're not alone. And for years and years, I, even as a teacher, because of some of the things I had witnessed and been experienced in, like what I experienced early in my career, I would wake up. I didn't know I had PTSD. I would
Yeah.
wake up in sweats in the night. I would wake up worried about certain students. Now, is there
Mhm.
also a supernatural lens that I have where many of those things were accurate and many of those things were similar to what I was experiencing as a kid, but you're told, well, stop, or like the things that maybe just somebody doesn't understand. I've always had that connection with my dad. It was different with my mom because they're from two different worlds, you know, and very, very different backgrounds, as all of our parents are. A little different with Puerto Rican and Amish Mennonite bloodlines, but that on top of it was something that became a thing as to why I hid emotions for so many years and why I felt like, well, this is weird. Nobody else is, I don't know if anybody's also having dreams like this or having
Mm.
like this when they're uncomfortable around someone and they can sense something. Like, I don't know. Now, as an adult and as you learn more about yourself and others in the world, you realize, oh, no, those are actually part of spiritual gifts. And you should be sharpening those things to serve the world. Like, so it all comes full circle, no matter what in our lives. And I do believe everything works for the good of those who desire to serve that which is divine, our creator. And we are creators because we are made in the image of God. When I heard that term, though, open soul surgery, one of the trails we went down, and you know, I was very intentional. So because I had gone through very, very deep grief, I had never experienced depression like I was after
Mm.
my mother passed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And Alie Mae has heard it all. But I knew that there was so much more underneath a lot of the stuff that was coming up for me. And we had talked a little bit about the past life experiences. And you know, to this day, there's different things and you might feel whatever way. I would encourage people, and I still struggle with this, but do your best, try not to label things as good or bad
Yep.
or things like that. Because for
Yep.
me, I didn't grow up being taught that we have past lives or anything. And to be quite frank with you, the reason why I'm sharing these two particular sessions, Alie Mae, is one of the realizations I've had. And I think I shared this with you, is sometimes the things we think are out there are woo woo. It's really just a tool to show you all along you were the one holding on to this. You
Yeah.
were the one creating this ongoing story, which
Story.
you couldn't control maybe what has happened in certain ways to your life, but we all are responsible for and control
Mm.
how we accept our life and how
Mhm.
we respond to the things that have happened to us.
Mhm.
And then how we choose to take action moving forward. That's not anybody else's fault, or how we choose not to take action. So all of that to say, we do a past life session. Very moving experience. what were you thinking as a practitioner, even working with me? Because I do think, and I won't get offended if you share honestly, but I think it's important for people to also hear that vantage point, because for me, I just felt so completely loved and accepted for one of the first times as an adult. I'm trying not to cry
Yeah, no, I know. I'm gonna cry with you.
because I was in such spaces of being under immense pressure and being
Yeah,
told, you can't be this way over here. You have to be this way over here. And then the
yeah.
layer of the cultural aspects. I go into this space, Latinos are disappointed because of how I look. I go into this space. I literally had a client, white lady, say this to my face. I thought you were just like me. So you
Hmm.
have then all these competing systems of the world that man has
Hmm.
created, and your whole life, it's this message of, no, you're not quite good enough for over here for us to accept you, which I know inherently. I'm a child of God. Thank you, Papa.
Hmm.
My parents taught me that my identity is not wrapped up in what other people think of me. They were both good at being themselves, even if there's pieces that maybe they just didn't have the tools to identify. Whether it was about parenting or relationships or whatever, or cross-cultural communications, like whatever those
Yeah.
things are. I want you to kind of share though, what do you experience as a practitioner? Because our sessions are pretty intense.
Oh, yeah.
There's
I
been a
was just
lot
gonna
of
say
tears.
that.
I'm gonna go to one of the other sessions too.
Yeah, of course.
But this one in particular was one that um it was a transformational experience, even if it was a window into in your DNA. And I do believe in epigenetics and how we continue things through our DNA strands, and that we are truly
Yeah.
a continuation of the story of our ancestors because we share blood. And that to me is at a very soul and cellular level. I think that it's just so important, because if anything, it gave me a clarity to go, oh, I look at my dad's bloodlines of women, I look at my mom's, and I know so many of the stories, just even from sitting with elders and having that privilege on both sides of my family to even be able to do that with lots of living relatives growing up, great grandparents. We stay with them all the time. And then at the same time, simultaneously, I don't even know if you know this, I have both of my grandmas who passed. They were first significant deaths in my life, um, that showed up in dreams. So
Mm.
like there's those things that we might all experience. I think many people who I'm speaking to more and more have been afraid to share because they don't want people to go, you're weird.
You're weird,
I already
yeah.
know that I am, and I've been told I haven't fit in since I was a kid. So you might as well embrace it, people. We're all freaking weird.
Hey,
And
I tell all
actually,
my clients, like, hey, I'm a weird
yeah,
hypnotist. I ask weird questions. You'll get used
right.
to it. They love
So
it.
I say all that to say was, even if somebody says, oh, past lives, I don't believe in that. Yeah, okay. What happened when I was hypnotized, though, eventually helped me to unpack what were the lies and narratives that I was
Mm.
repeating about being a woman and being worthy,
Yes.
that are also not just for me to break, but for me to break for generations and say, I get to do differently. Thank God. What
And
were
can,
you
yeah.
experiencing when you were doing that particular with me, and what you were noticing? Partly so people know, and partly because I'm pretty in tune, from like an even imagination and subconscious place. And I know
Yeah.
that might not be everybody's internal dialogue or reality.
And so, can I also just reference back to that original quote that I shared? No one can make you feel inferior without your consent, right? And so, I think of a lot of the themes that were popping up in your session without giving away too many details, of course. But I think that,
I give you
there was
a patient client privilege or whatever.
privileges. Okay, yeah, of course. Thank you. But I do think that, our biases from past lives come with us. Those can be biases towards other people, but those can be biases even towards ourselves.
Yeah.
you might have been a woman hater in a past life, and now all of a sudden you show up as a woman. I mean, I've literally never described it before to that extent. I've never described it that way, but literally, like, we could be holding on to these prejudices and biases when we show up in this life. And I think that that's some of the stuff too that usually pops up in a past life session, that, oh, this goes beyond the programming from my adolescence and from my childhood. This is stuff that's still affecting me over the course of lifetimes. And so usually what we do, and correct me if I'm wrong, we chose to go to the lifetime that most karmically influenced this lifetime.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
And a lot of times figures from this life
Yep.
will figure out who they were in that past life. Because if you believe in this type of work, souls tend to travel in packs, and you're just kind of going through, exactly, and you're going through lifetimes, and you're creating karma, and you're balancing the karma. You're doing that karmic dance, exactly, until you officially finally kind of settle that karma, learn your lesson, and then maybe that tie to that soul isn't there anymore, right? Yeah, it's just, and when I'm guiding through the session, again, I'm just a guide, right? As the practitioner, I'm not there to lead you in any certain way. I'm not there to, like, tell you my biases or anything like that. I really am just simply a guide. And as with your session and any past life session I've done, sometimes we go into it with like some thoughts or like ideas or expectations, and it just evolves, and so many things are made more clear, not only in the session, but then there's also did you notice that there's an integration after the session as well?
Oh, and yes, thank you. Because that was one of the key points I wanted to state, going back to a devotion to loving, learning you.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and Alie Mae knows this, like, and that was part of my people pleasing that I had to get over. And I knew you knew this by my language and how I would over explain and all those things. But I had to actually put boundaries in my emotions, my soul, my heart. They wouldn't allow me to keep, even if I was like, no, I want to be devoted. Like, I'm a person who has been typically more very, because of being in schools and things of that nature, being in leadership roles. But I was very intentional that if I didn't feel that I was fully ready to do the depth of the work I needed to, I rescheduled. And typically we usually at least 3 to 4 months apart sessions.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I don't tell clients like your name, but I'm like, you can do one session, you can do 5 sessions, you can do it spread over.
Super fan like Justine.
Yeah, I'm like, you can do it over the course of 10 weeks, or you can be like my friend, and basically ever since I started, she's been there over the course of 3 years.
So like, she just won't go away. No, I think, and that's another testament of, when you work with a practitioner like Alie Mae, and in hypnotherapy in particular, you have to let the path evolve as you are feeling ready. Because otherwise, for me, I just also knew, at least at that level with discipline, the stuff isn't gonna stick, because I knew the depth that I was uncovering, some deep, dark things that I had not addressed. And like I gave my example earlier, I wouldn't have necessarily even known or have the tools to even identify. In that particular session, one of the other uncoverings was just, and I still ponder it often. I've told a few people about it, but it made so much sense that, once again, even if you do a session and you still decide, well, I still don't believe in past lives, or I don't believe in epigenetics, or anything that we've said, it's a means to an end of, for me, I still, Alie Mae, that's just to let you know this, there are so many journaling experiences and things I go back to. There are moments, because of how that experience was for me, I haven't even unpacked all of them from my time in Puerto Rico in February, March. And I have many to tell you during our next, outing adventure as friends. But I had so many things solidify, and this would be 2 years after that session, that just came abreast with me even being somewhere where a lot of my family was and has been and is. And so I am a full-on proponent of unpacking these things, even if perhaps you have to say, just like the Bible shows us and tells us, God help my unbelief. Because sometimes it is in those process where we realize, again, it doesn't even necessarily go back to the tools. It goes back to how you choose to integrate and apply them. So I think first step, be aware of what tools you're gonna maybe use and what you need and what makes sense. Secondly, understand that, for me anyways, there's even if you have quick results of like, oh wow, I already don't crave this. That's great. For me, I need that to be a continuation because I know the depth of certain things that I want to address in my life. And that, again, it goes back to, maybe that's not you. Maybe you don't need that. The final thing then, as far as session, and this is the final one, and it's the E word.
Yes. Save the best for last, baby.
Yeah. So you didn't see any like projectile pea soup or whatever it is, during our session, but you did see some vomit. No. So
Yes, I did.
Yeah, one of our most recent sessions, and this is after having some realizations specifically from a professional lens. So after doing some initial work that first year and a half or so with personal, really unpacking some different physical and trauma things that had happened to me, understanding more about why I gravitate towards certain foods, like all just different things. This took a turn towards, I was still having a lot of inflammation and pain in my body. Now, I also knew what I was and wasn't doing, which that is our own responsibility. But overall, it was a different type of pain. And it was not symptoms I had had. So one of the things, and I also put off this session for actually probably a good 6 to 8 months.
Oh gosh, yeah.
We had talked about it, and she had said, do you know, I am, and I remember laughing like, what do you mean you're getting a certification in exorcism? So first of all, tell people what that means as a hypnotherapist, and then I'll talk a little bit about my session.
Yeah, this is separate from my hypnosis training, but you still use the hypnotic state. So mainstream media is going to call it exorcism. What I'm certified in is spiritual detachment or spiritual releasement. But yeah, you didn't say anything wrong by saying exorcism, Justine. That's how I describe it to people, because not many people would know what detachment or releasement would mean. So essentially, the whole gist of it is lost souls or actual souls that have worked with the dark side can attach to us in some way. And that can create all sorts of ailments. It can create new habits, new addictions. Not good stuff.
Let me say this really quick. I was noticing it ramp up after my mother passed. I was also experiencing, and I think I had described this to you, and my sister's aware of this, my dad's aware of it, just some close people, but I'll share it publicly. And I feel comfortable now sharing it. But I was also experiencing a lot of moments where it was like, this isn't me.
It's possession.
Why am I feeling like this? And I part of it at a very spiritual level was I was having some different kind of supernatural nudges from my mom. And there was a lot of mental health things. So I just want to give context. Go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for my explanation, just to wrap it up, essentially, it's my job to make contact with those, because those lost souls, they could be hiding out, in your freaking armpit, in your big toe. They hide in small areas, but they create big changes and issues and problems. So essentially we make contact with it. I work with the archangels, and our job is to send those souls to the light. And it literally is depossession. Which
is interesting. So immediately after my mother passed, I I had this gold chain for a few years.
Okay.
Immediately after, something said, you should go buy this pendant, and it's Archangel Michael. So there's also even little nuances that we don't
Yeah.
even have enough time to share all the synchronicities with you all.
Seriously.
But there's a lot of things like that too, that
Yep.
especially if you're watching this, I know many of you who do, on a personal level, if you are a Christian, you claim Christianity or any religious, honestly, tradition, if you're still struggling, you're like, okay, I'm not trying to convince you to believe anything. What I am trying to state very clearly is that I'm a person who comes from that background. And but I also want to point out specifically, once again, in the Western world, and this is different globally, even when I've traveled and when I've worked with people or I have friends who live internationally, family, we are not very accepting of the supernatural in the West, and we do everything to resist it. We try to judge people and call them weird or outliers or
Woo
whatever.
woo. Yeah.
Yeah, woo woo, all the stuff. And the reality is, as much as people have made, and I'm just going to say it plainly, as much as people, and it's a political agenda that started in the 40s and conflated the Bible with politics and being against homosexuality. There's even nuances like that, where that specific phrasing, if you look at the original translation of the Ethiopian scrolls, which are the Bible and the birthplace of the biblical scrolls and the text and Jesus, all the stuff, if you really examine that, that translation doesn't exist for an actual word that means that in the Bible. And angels and archangels are taught about and mentioned in the Holy Bible, every translation, over 200 times. I put that out there as a person who even probably 10 years ago would have been like, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Right.
And so I want to show all aspects, because it's okay to also be open to other things and be willing to examine your own beliefs. So I put that out there as just a disclaimer. I know we got to wrap up. We go into session, very powerful session to start with.
Yeah.
I started crying a lot. We didn't uncover some big dark mystery. The biggest thing was I had grown up around church. So you always picture, when you see like in church settings that happening or a demon coming out of someone,
Yeah.
you might throw up.
Yeah.
Or I threw up. I had a lot of physical symptoms. But then also within a couple weeks, it was like miraculous healing in a lot of ways. And
I think it's
I wanna,
important. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to name two other reasons why, though. So one, I was also committed in the very much physical. This isn't just me sitting around doing audios too and meditating. I started changing my diet. I became a pescatarian in August, so almost a year now. Haven't had meat. There's other things that I was already doing. So I want to also put this out there that there's not a magic pill of any direction, but this was a devoted thing of saying, no, I want to be healthy and I want to be better in these ways. And I feel like then I need to relearn myself, and I don't know myself in certain ways at this point, meaning I need to lock back into who is young Justine and who am I really? And take off those masks that we all acquire, especially in our 20s and 30s, in our career and all those things. The other factor is I have, and I say this because Alie Mae knows and adores him and always calls him my angel. He really is. I have an incredible partner of 10 plus years, Thaddeus, thank you, who is also my accountability in different ways and has been the most loving, accepting, amazing person to be on this journey. And a support system is important. So I say that because I also don't want people to also be misinformed, like, oh yeah, she did that and this just happened to her. Oh, and she's so successful. Right. So the perception is one thing, but I also want to be very truthful that without his prayer with me, alongside me, without him pointing out my worth, and being patient with me through all the triggers and reactions and things that I've uncovered in our relationship that I didn't even know about myself. So I would also say, examine who you're with and who you're surrounding yourself with.
So important.
Process of this, because he has also always been supportive of my work with Alie Mae. I just want to say all that.
Yeah, gosh, he
So
really
talk to
is.
us a
I'm so
little bit
glad.
about what we uncovered,
Yeah.
because what I stepped back and examined was not, oh, there's just these so many lodged spirits or things like. What I really came to a conclusion of, and I still kind of reflect on it this way, is I identified fragments of souls that
Mhm.
I was hanging on to and not letting go. And I was holding on to anger or hurt or
Mhm.
resentment or
Oh
fear.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So
All of
anyways,
those
I had a
emotions are gonna
very
be there, are gonna be
physical,
associated with
yeah,
like with what you're holding on to. And I think it's important too to note we weren't actually going into it with the intention of doing exorcism.
no, because I had kept saying, no, I don't think that's for me.
Sure, sure. So we started another session that was
That's
kind of past
right.
life. Yes, it's interlife. You were in where you were like interlife and picking your parents and you're in the womb and stuff and you
That's
started to get sicker
right.
and sicker and you went to the restroom and you know me, I'm just like, yeah, whatever you need. We have all the time you need. And then you came in and you go, Alie Mae, I think I need an exorcism. I'm like, let me get my prayers. So
Yeah.
I do just want to also kind of, you know, commend you for just showing up for yourself, but knowing that everybody's timing is different.
Yeah.
And in that moment, with all of those emotions and all those things stirring up, you knew you were ready. And yeah, we've been talking about me being on your podcast for 3 years now, essentially, right? But really, you know, we both showed up when we were
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. I think we both knew that though too. I think those are my most cherished friendships. And I think if you're struggling to identify closer friends, especially in your 30s, that can be
Yeah,
tricky. I think especially for women. Many
yeah,
of us have identified different things tied, especially to mother relationships and maybe lack of trust with other women. Like it can be a real thing, and at least it has been for me. Um, I
yeah.
I will say that again, just be okay to be real with yourself, but also just be very aware of who you're surrounding yourself with, because
Mm.
it makes a very big difference to your journey. And I just can't thank you enough, Alie Mae, for allowing yourself to be utilized as a vessel to serve, but also for listening to those
Mhm.
nudges of what I believe is the Holy Spirit, and just actually listening, because so many people have grown and healed, including myself,
Yep.
from you being willing to listen and take leaps of faith out of
Yeah.
out of your own comfort zones and healing.
Yep.
So, anything that you want to, we always end with unapologetically promoting. Um,
Shameless
so
plug.
where can people find you? She is at, we always link social media, but always look at those resource notes. We put whatever we have out, and then number one, where you can find our guests. How can people book with you? But on
Yeah.
all social media, I freaking love watching her social media, by the way, you all. She is such an incredible teacher of even just, you need these reminders of like, oh, yeah, no, I shouldn't do that. Oh, that's such a great,
Hmm.
like, so on
Yeah.
TikTok, you're at Hypnotherapist of Chicago, as well as Instagram. You put out such great teaching there. How else can people learn about you or what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe by the time you post this on YouTube, you know, always going, always growing. So maybe I'll have a YouTube by then too, because, you know, I've got so many of these videos saved and it's like, I really do need to get on YouTube as a channel. So
We
I'm
need
sure.
you. We need you.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure that'll be Hypnotherapist of Chicago. Certainly you can go to my website, hypnotherapistofchicago.com. Again, book a free consult with me. Let's talk. It's zero obligation. Let's chat. If you think you might be interested, there's a good chance that after listening to this, if you're still feeling called to do the work, either from the side of a client or a practitioner, reach out to me, right? There's a reason that you're feeling called to do the work. So yeah, online hypnotherapistofchicago.com. You can just book that consult right away. And like Justine mentioned, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, Hypnotherapist of Chicago as well.
Thank you so much, Miss Alie Mae Miller. Um, we're over time, and I appreciate you so much, my
Oh,
friend.
it was perfect. I loved everything about it. And hey, our dogs were like so well behaved.
Good job, Abe and Canella. Thank you all for listening, subscribing, sharing. If you find value or you have questions, of course, hit us up in the comments.
Yeah.
Let us know as you see these come out over time, and let's continue to get compassionately curious together. Take care. Until next time.